The Project Gutenberg eBook of A Tangled Tale, by Carroll. Not 4. The Dead Reckoning. I did dream of moneybags tonight. Noonday on the open sea within a few degrees of the equator is apt to be oppressively warm, and our two travelers were now airily clad in suits of dazzling white linen, having laid aside the chain armor which they had found not only endurable in the cold mountain air they had lately been breathing, but a necessary precaution against the daggers of the banditti who infested the heights. Their holiday trip was over, and they were now on their way home, in the monthly packet which plied between the two great ports of the island they had been exploring. Along with their armor, the tourists had laid aside the antiquated speech it had pleased them to affect while in knightly disguise, and had returned to the ordinary style of two country gentlemen of the 20th century. Stretched on a pile of cushions, under the shade of a huge umbrella, they were lazily watching some native fishermen, who had come on board at the last landing place, each carrying over his shoulder a small but heavy sack. A large weighing machine, that had been used for cargo at the last port, stood on the deck, and round this the fishermen had gathered, and, with much unintelligible jabber, seemed to be weighing their sacks. "More like sparrows in a tree than human talk, isn't it?" the elder tourist remarked to his son, who smiled feebly, but would not exert himself so far as to speak. The old man tried another listener. "What have they got in those sacks, Captain?" he inquired, as that great being passed them in his never-ending parade to and fro on the deck. The captain paused in his march, and towered over the travelers tall, grave, and serenely self-satisfied. "Fishermen," he explained, "are often passengers in my ship. These 5 are from my Truxie, the place we last touched at, and that's the way they carry their money. The money of this island is heavy, gentlemen, but it costs little, as you may guess. We buy it from them by weight, about 5 shillings a pound. I fancy a 10-pound note would buy all those sacks." By this time the old man had closed his eyes in order, no doubt, to concentrate his thoughts on these interesting facts, but the captain failed to realize his motive, and with a grunt resumed his monotonous march. Meanwhile the fishermen were getting so noisy over the weighing machine that one of the sailors took the precaution of carrying off all the weights, leaving them to amuse themselves with such substitutes in the form of winch handles, belaying pins, and as they could find. This brought their excitement to a speedy end. They carefully hid their sacks in the folds of the jib that lay on the deck near the tourists, and strolled away. When next the captain's heavy footfall passed, the younger man roused himself to speak. "What did you call the place those fellows came from, Captain?" he asked. "My Truxie, sir." "And the one we are bound for?" The captain took a long breath, plunged into the word, and came out of it nobly. "They call it Cagoth Janie, sir." "I give it up," the young man faintly said. He stretched out his hand for a glass of iced water which the compassionate steward had brought him a minute ago, and had set down, unluckily, just outside the shadow of the umbrella. It was scalding hot, and he decided not to drink it. The effort of making this resolution, coming close on the fatiguing conversation he had just gone through, was too much for him. He sank back among the cushions in silence. His father courteously tried to make amends for his nonchalance. "Whereabouts are we now, Captain?" said he. "Have you any idea?" The captain cast a pitying look on the ignorant landsman. "I could tell you that, sir," he said, in a tone of lofty condescension, "to an inch." "You don't say so," the old man remarked, in a tone of languid surprise. "And mean so?" persisted the captain. "Why, what do you suppose would become of my ship, if I were to lose my longitude and my latitude? Could you make anything of my dead reckoning?" "Nobody could, I'm sure," the other heartily rejoined. But he had overdone it. "It's perfectly intelligible," the captain said, in an offended tone, "to anyone that understands such things." With these words he moved away, and began giving orders to the men, who were preparing to hoist the jib. Our tourists watched the operation with such interest that neither of them remembered the 5 moneybags, which in another moment, as the wind filled out the jib, were whirled overboard and fell heavily into the sea. But the poor fishermen had not so easily forgotten their property. In a moment they had rushed to the spot, and stood uttering cries of fury, and pointing, now to the sea, and now to the sailors who had caused the disaster. The old man explained it to the captain. "Let us make it up among us," he added in conclusion. 10 pounds will do it, I think you said?" But the captain put aside the suggestion with a wave of the hand. "No, sir," he said, in his grandest manner. "You will excuse me, I am sure, but these are my passengers. The accident has happened on board my ship, and under my orders. It is for me to make compensation." He turned to the angry fishermen. "Come here, my men," he said, in the Mytruxian dialect. "Tell me the weight of each sack. I saw you weighing them just now." Then ensued a perfect babble of noise, as the 5 natives explained, all screaming together, how the sailors had carried off the weights, and they had done what they could with whatever came handy. 2 iron belaying pins, 3 blocks, 6 holystones, 4 winch handles, and a large hammer, were now carefully weighed, the captain superintending and noting the results. But the matter did not seem to be settled. Even then, an angry discussion followed, in which the sailors and the 5 natives all joined, and at last the captain approached our tourists with a disconcerted look, which he tried to conceal under a laugh. "It's an absurd difficulty," he said. "Perhaps one of you gentlemen can suggest something. It seems they weighed the sacks 2 at a time. If they didn't have 5 separate weighings, of course you can't value them separately," the youth hastily decided. "Let's hear all about it," was the old man's more cautious remark. "They did have 5 separate weighings," the captain said, "but well, it beats me entirely," he added, in a sudden burst of candor. "Here's the result. First and second sack weighed 12 pounds, second and third, 13.5, third and fourth, 11.5, fourth and fifth, 8, and then they say they had only the large hammer left, and it took 3 sacks to weigh it down. That's the first, third, and fifth, and they weighed 16 pounds. There, gentlemen. Did you ever hear anything like that?" The old man muttered under his breath, "If only my sister were here," and looked helplessly at his son. His son looked at the 5 natives. The 5 natives looked at the captain. The captain looked at nobody, his eyes were cast down, and he seemed to be saying softly to himself, "Contemplate one another, gentlemen, if such be your good pleasure." "I contemplate myself. Not the oughts and crosses. Look here, upon this picture, and on this." "And what made you choose the first train, goosey?" said Mad Mathesis, as they got into the cab. "Couldn't you count better than that?" "I took an extreme case," was the tearful reply. "Our excellent preceptress always says, when in doubt, my dears, take an extreme case, and I was in doubt." "Does it always succeed?" her aunt inquired. Clara sighed. "Not always," she reluctantly admitted. "And I can't make out why. One day she was telling the little girls they make such a noise at tea, you know, the more noise you make, the less jam you will have, and vice versa. And I thought they wouldn't know what vice versa meant, so I explained it to them. I said, if you make an infinite noise, you'll get no jam, and if you make no noise, you'll get an infinite lot of jam. But our excellent preceptress said that wasn't a good instance." "Why wasn't it?" she added plaintively. Her aunt evaded the question. "One sees certain objections to it," she said. "But how did you work it with the metropolitan trains? None of them go infinitely fast, I believe." "I called them hares and tortoises," Clara said a little timidly, for she dreaded being laughed at. "And I thought there couldn't be so many hares as tortoises on the line, so I took an extreme case, 1 hare and an infinite number of tortoises." "An extreme case, indeed," her aunt remarked with admirable gravity, "and a most dangerous state of things. And I thought, if I went with a tortoise, there would be only 1 hare to meet, but if I went with the hare, you know, there were crowds of tortoises." "It wasn't a bad idea," said the elder lady, as they left the cab, at the entrance of Burlington House. "You shall have another chance today. We'll have a match in marking pictures." Clara brightened up. "I should like to try again, very much," she said. "I'll take more care this time. How are we to play?" To this question Mad Mathesis made no reply. She was busy drawing lines down the margins of the catalogue. "See," she said after a minute, "I've drawn 3 columns against the names of the pictures in the long room, and I want you to fill them with oughts and crosses, crosses for good marks and oughts for bad. The first column is for choice of subject, the second for arrangement, the third for coloring, and these are the conditions of the match. You must give 3 crosses to 2 or 3 pictures. You must give 2 crosses to 4 or 5. "Do you mean only 2 crosses?" said Clara. Or may I count the 3 cross pictures among the 2 cross pictures? Of course you may, said her aunt. Anyone that has 3 eyes may be said to have 2 eyes, I suppose? Clara followed her aunt's dreamy gaze across the crowded gallery, half dreading to find that there was a 3-eyed person in sight. And you must give 1 cross to 9 or 10. And which wins the match? Clara asked, as she carefully entered these conditions on a blank leaf in her catalogue. Whichever marks fewest pictures. But suppose we mark the same number? Then whichever uses most marks. Clara considered. I don't think it's much of a match, she said. I shall mark 9 pictures, and give 3 crosses to 3 of them, 2 crosses to 2 more, and 1 cross each to all the rest. Will you, indeed, said her aunt. Wait till you've heard all the conditions, my impetuous child. You must give 3 oughts to 1 or 2 pictures, 2 oughts to 3 or 4, and 1 ought to 8 or 9. I don't want you to be too hard on the RAS. Clara quite gasped as she wrote down all these fresh conditions. It's a great deal worse than circulating decimals, she said. But I'm determined to win, all the same. Her aunt smiled grimly. We can begin here, she said, as they paused before a gigantic picture, which the catalogue informed them was the portrait of Lieutenant Brown, mounted on his favorite elephant. He looks awfully conceited, said Clara. I don't think he was the elephant's favorite lieutenant. What a hideous picture it is. And it takes up room enough for 20. Mind what you say, my dear, her aunt interposed. It's by an R.A. But Clara was quite reckless. I don't care who it's by, she cried. And I shall give it 3 bad marks. Aunt and niece soon drifted away from each other in the crowd, and for the next half hour Clara was hard at work, putting in marks and rubbing them out again, and hunting up and down for suitable pictures. This she found the hardest part of all. I can't find the one I want, she exclaimed at last, almost crying with vexation. What is it you want to find, my dear? The voice was strange to Clara, but so sweet and gentle that she felt attracted to the owner of it, even before she had seen her, and when she turned, and met the smiling looks of 2 little old ladies, whose round dimpled faces, exactly alike, seemed never to have known a care, it was as much as she could do, as she confessed to Aunt Mattie afterwards, to keep herself from hugging them both. I was looking for a picture, she said, that has a good subject and that's well arranged but badly colored. The little old ladies glanced at each other in some alarm. Calm yourself, my dear, said the one who had spoken first, and try to remember which it was. What was the subject? Was it an elephant, for instance? The other sister suggested. They were still in sight of Lieutenant Brown. I don't know, indeed, Clara impetuously replied. You know it doesn't matter a bit what the subject is, so long as it's a good one. Once more the sisters exchanged looks of alarm, and one of them whispered something to the other, of which Clara caught only the one word mad. They mean Aunt Mattie, of course, she said to herself, fancying, in her innocence, that London was like her native town, where everybody knew everybody else. If you mean my aunt, she added aloud, she's there just 3 pictures beyond Lieutenant Brown. Ah, well. Then you'd better go to her, my dear, her new friend said, soothingly. She'll find you the picture you want. Goodbye, dear. Goodbye, dear, echoed the other sister, mind you don't lose sight of your aunt. And the pair trotted off into another room, leaving Clara rather perplexed at their manner. They're real darlings, she soliloquized. I wonder why they pity me so, and she wandered on, murmuring to herself it must have 2 good marks, and not 6. Her radiancy. 1 PC thing that might have got. Masky, that thing my no can do. You talkie you no sabe what? Bamboo. They landed, and were at once conducted to the palace. About halfway they were met by the governor, who welcomed them in English, a great relief to our travelers, whose guide could speak nothing but Kagofjanian. I don't half like the way they grin at us as we go by, the old man whispered to his son. And why do they say bamboo so often? It alludes to a local custom, replied the governor, who had overheard the question. Such persons as happen in any way to displease her radiancy are usually beaten with rods. Why do they say bamboo so often? The old man shuddered. A most objectionable local custom, he remarked with strong emphasis. I wish we had never landed. Did you notice that black fellow, Norman, opening his great mouth at us? I verily believe he would like to eat us. Norman appealed to the governor, who was walking at his other side. Do they often eat distinguished strangers here? He said, in as indifferent a tone as he could assume. Not often, not ever, was the welcome reply. They are not good for it. Pigs we eat, for they are fat. This old man is thin, and thankful to be so, muttered the elder traveler. Beaten we shall be without a doubt. It's a comfort to know it won't be beaten without the bee. My dear boy, just look at the peacocks. They were now walking between two unbroken lines of those gorgeous birds, each held in check, by means of a golden collar and chain, by a black slave, who stood well behind, so as not to interrupt the view of the glittering tail, with its network of rustling feathers and its 100 eyes. The governor smiled proudly. In your honor, he said, Her Radiancy has ordered up 10,000 additional peacocks. She will, no doubt, decorate you, before you go, with the usual star and feathers. It'll be star without the S, faltered one of his hearers. Come, come, don't lose heart, said the other. All this is full of charm for me. You are young, Norman, sighed his father, young and light-hearted. For me, it is charm without the sea. The old one is sad, the governor remarked with some anxiety. He has, without doubt, effected some fearful crime? But I haven't, the poor old gentleman hastily exclaimed. Tell him I haven't, Norman. He has not, as yet, Norman gently explained. And the governor repeated, in a satisfied tone, not as yet. Yours is a wondrous country, the governor resumed, after a pause. Now here is a letter from a friend of mine, a merchant, in London. He and his brother went there a year ago, with £1,000 apiece, and on New Year's Day they had £60,000 between them. How did they do it? Norman eagerly exclaimed. Even the elder traveler looked excited. The governor handed him the open letter. Anybody can do it, when once they know how, so ran this oracular document. We borrowed not, we stole not. We began the year with only £1,000 apiece, and last New Year's Day we had £60,000 between us, 60,000 golden sovereigns. Norman looked grave and thoughtful as he handed back the letter. His father hazarded one guess. Was it by gambling? A Kagofjanian never gambles, said the governor gravely, as he ushered them through the palace gates. They followed him in silence down a long passage, and soon found themselves in a lofty hall, lined entirely with peacock's feathers. In the center was a pile of crimson cushions, which almost concealed the figure of Her Radiancy, a plump little damsel, in a robe of green satin dotted with silver stars, whose pale round face lit up for a moment with a half-smile as the travelers bowed before her, and then relapsed into the exact expression of a wax doll, while she languidly murmured a word or two in the Kagofjanian dialect. The governor interpreted. Her Radiancy welcomes you. She notes the impenetrable placidity of the old one, and the imperceptible acuteness of the youth.